The first epistle of Peter was addressed to early Christians scattered across Asia Minor, which is modern day Turkey. These believers were mostly Gentiles, people who had converted to Christianity from pagan religions. They were living under Roman rule in a time when following Jesus was often viewed with suspicion, if not outright hostility. Christianity was not yet a recognized religion, rather a cult sprouting from Judaism. Because of their allegiance to Jesus, Christians were sometimes accused of undermining traditional Roman values and refusing to honor the emperor as divine. This social tension created feelings of alienation and fear among the early believers. Peter's letter was intended to strengthen their identity in Christ and remind them that they belonged to something larger than any empire. When he calls them living stones, he is giving them a new way to see themselves, not as outcasts, but as essential parts of God's own dwelling place. In the ancient world, temples were physical spaces of glory and power. Peter flips that idea on its head. God's temple is not made of marble or gold, but of people. Like newborn infants long for the pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow into salvation, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. Come to him, a living stone rejected by mortals, yet chosen and precious in God's sight. And like living stones, let yourselves be built into a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. This language is layered with meaning. First, the image of the living stone points to Christ himself. He is the cornerstone, the foundation upon which everything else is built. In ancient construction, the cornerstone determined the alignment and strength of the whole structure. For Christians, Jesus is both the pattern and the source of stability. When Peter says that believers are also living stones, he emphasizes that our identity and purpose are inseparable from Christ. We are not passive bricks. We are alive, connected, and growing together. Another key theme here is priesthood. In the Old Testament, priests were mediators between God and the people. Like they offered sacrifices and maintained the sacred rituals. Peter tells his readers that in Christ they have all become part of a holy priesthood. This was revolutionary. It meant that ordinary men and women now had direct access to God and a calling to offer their own spiritual sacrifices, things like love, generosity, justice, and praise. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people. To understand how radical this was, consider the pressures early Christians faced. They were criticized for refusing to participate in idol worship and civic ceremonies. Some lost jobs or social standing because of their faith. Others experienced persecution. In that context, being reminded that they were chosen, valued, and built into something eternal was a source of profound hope. So, how do we apply this today? In our modern world, we may not face the same persecutions, but we still struggle with feelings of isolation and unworthiness. When some Christians refuse to say, I pledge allegiance to cloth of the nation, they risk being ostracized and losing jobs. Our consumer culture often tells us we are only as valuable as what we own or how we look. Peter's message cuts through that noise. You are a living stone in God's house. You belong. You have a purpose. This passage also challenges us to think about our communities. If we are being built together into a spiritual temple, then our relationships are not optional. They are essential. The strength of the whole depends on the connection between each stone. This means investing in one another, forgiving each other, and working for justice and compassion. There is also a call here to embrace our priestly role. Each of us is invited to offer spiritual sacrifices. This doesn't mean performing rituals, but rather living lives that reflect God's goodness. When you encourage someone who is struggling, when you act with integrity in your work, when you advocate for those without a voice, these are all spiritual sacrifices. They are offerings that rise to God like a pleasing aroma. Peter ends exhorting, "Beloved, I urge you as aliens and exiles to abstain from the desires of the flesh that wage war against the soul." In other words, our conduct is part of our witness. Even when misunderstood, our lives can point others to the truth of God's love. What kind of stone are you? Are you connected to others, supporting and being supported? Are you offering your life as a living sacrifice? And are you embracing the identity God has given you? Remember, being a living stone is not about perfection. It's about letting God shape you and fit you into something bigger than yourself, something sacred, enduring, and beautiful. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week.